What's up, everybody? Appreciate you being here. Wanted to let you know before we get into the show, there's a couple of easy ways that you can help me with it. With ideas, problems, solutions to whatever you find interesting, anything from a word to an essay, just send it to me. Through the comment section, wherever you listen, on Instagram or Twitter, I'm on both at The Best Idea, or straight to the email, bestideapodcast@gmail.com. Or you can support it in other ways. You can rate it wherever you listen it to. That's probably the easiest. Subscribing to the YouTube page is very helpful. The most direct way is Patreon. Patreon.com/thebestidea. $1 a month just to show some support. If you do $3 a month, you'll get early access to the Stop the Presses episodes. You sign up once, you don't have to think about it again. I really appreciate your time. And here we go. Welcome back, everybody. Best Idea Podcast. I'm Stephen Cochran. I appreciate you taking the time because I don't do episodes normally that have like a crisis mode kind of thing attached to them, but this one is definitely that sort of a show. People have different opinions about what is the most pressing crisis happening in the world right now. There's definitely like a bent toward negativity all the time. So it seems like any crisis is going to take the top headlines of news stories and stuff like that. Some people tell you it's climate change, food insecurity, all that sort of stuff. I stumbled across this, and it has to be the most important problem to address for today, and that is that we are running the fuck out of billionaires. I mean, the numbers are dropping dramatically. So Forbes, I think everybody knows, every year they put out this list of exorbitantly wealthy people, the Billionaires list, and they came out with theirs, and there are 2,668 billionaires in the world. That's not the startling number. The fact that there are 87 fewer than a year ago should give us all pause. I mean, 87. So, not only that, but they are poorer than they were. So, collectively, these roughly 2,700 people, individuals, they've got about 12 and a half, almost $13 trillion. But that's $400 billion less than they had in 2021. I mean, you got to wonder how, seriously, how is somebody supposed to make it? I mean, times are hard enough. Inflation is crazy right now. There was just a report that this last month, it's like 8.5% up. Bread's more expensive, milk's more expensive, gas is more expensive, meat is more expensive. Everything, anything that requires a truck to deliver it somewhere is going up in cost. And here we find that our most important citizens are just losing money like they've got holes in their pockets. I mean, $400 billion less. All they have left, if they were to scrape together all the cash they can muster, all they've got is $12.8 trillion. That's it. And we're all just sitting around like this is okay. I mean, look, everybody's got problems. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not trying to minimize anybody else's problems. But have you lost $1 billion in the last year? I bet you fucking haven't. I know I haven't. And that's why I sit here before you in awe that this is not racking up more headlines, more views. This is not a viral problem. And this is really the problem with people in general, is we don't have, our sense for what needs to happen now, the difference between the long term and the short term, it's skewed. It's totally fucked up. We're not really good at picking out, the problems when they need to be solved, and we need to get ahead of this one now. I mean, yeah, you could say that some of it is because, Russia invaded Ukraine, and there are some sanctions, and some Russians fell off of the list, and there are some Chinese billionaires that fell off of the list, and it's the point is this, is if we don't do something, we're going to run out of billionaires. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to live in a world where we have fewer than 3,000 billionaires walking around. I mean, the thing that gets me up in the morning and keeps me working all day is the hope, the belief that I will join their ranks one day to be a billionaire myself. But that hope is dashed when I wake up to find that in this year of our Lord, 2022, we're going in the wrong direction. It's unbelievable. And the reason this kind of stuck out to me is because there is, I guess, maybe not more talk than normal, but some about taxes and extremely wealthy people. I think the Biden budget calls for like a 20% tax on billionaires or people that have more than $500 million or some such thing. And it's like kicking a man when he's down. You know what I mean? A guy loses $1 billion out of his $8 billion net worth in a single year, and then you want to come along and just fucking tax that guy on top of that. I mean, you take somebody like Jeff Bezos. I'm gonna probably use Bezos as an example for a couple different things in this episode, just because we all know who he is, we all know why he's rich, and he's an easy person for us to to think about. But you take that guy, he's worth $178 billion. He's not at the top of the list. Elon Musk is the richest person in the world right now. According to the list, he's got like $218 billion. But let's stick with Bezos. So he has all this money, and what Biden wants to do is tax 20% of his assets. And just to keep the numbers simple, call it $170 billion, $34 billion he would owe in taxes. So let's just say that 20% tax actually passed, and he had to pay that out. And so he's left with what? I mean, what, a measly $1.40? It's unthinkable. It's it's socialism is what it is. And there's almost 3,000 billionaires in the world, and we're going back and forth about how much they should pay in taxes. It's actually really, to me, it's a little fucking confusing. So I think there's a couple of things confusing this tax idea, and not for nothing, there's a lot of people with skin in the game. They don't want their own taxes to go up. You look at a lot of like the news anchors, for example, that you'll hear say that taxes shouldn't go up on people that make a certain amount of money. Like sticking with Bezos as an example, guy paid like 3.4% last year in federal taxes. And I know he pays city taxes and state taxes. We'll get to that in a second. But there's a few things muddy in the waters. The media is obviously, and when I say that, I mean your basic news media, your Fox News, MSNBC, NBC, all these big alphabet soup media organizations. Probably on this particular issue, more Fox News and the quote unquote conservative networks. They're not really conservative, but they're seen as that way. The right leaning networks are against these taxes probably more than the left-leaning networks. And it makes perfect sense. Every single one of their news anchors has a net worth over like $5 million. Sean Hannity's worth $250 million. Of course, he doesn't want taxes to go up because he would have to pay those taxes. Glenn Beck's another example. He's worth like $250 million. If you were a big fan of Rush Limbaugh, before he kicked the bucket, he was worth like $600 million. So it makes sense that people like that would be against it. But I'm talking about for me and you, call it, regular I hate that term, regular Americans, but people that don't have tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. And the billionaires list itself kind of skews it. So 2,668 billionaires. Number one, they're not even really sure. You can find 3 or 4 different billionaires lists, and they have different people at the top. They have different overall numbers because a lot of this shit they don't have to actually disclose. I mean, it's which to a degree you could make sense. That if you would have taken $100,000 when Warren Buffett started his company and invested it in his company, you'd be unbelievably wealthy right now. Easily in the tens of millions of dollars. His company, Berkshire Hathaway, we'll talk about that a little bit later too, has grown exponentially. And who would you go tell once you hit the $100 million mark? I mean, there's nobody that you have to report that to. You don't have to call anybody and say, hey, by the way, today's that day. So they have no idea actually how many billionaires there are or how many people have net worths over certain thresholds, but they make intelligent guesses. Like Forbes has an army of journalists, investigative journalists, financial journalists that just go through everything that is available. Shares that people own. Publicly traded companies are the easiest rather than private companies. Like the Koch brothers, their company is private, so you can't really get into their financials. Whereas something like Amazon is obviously very public. And somebody like Bezos, you can look at why he's so wealthy. But then you think about, anything north of, we could say anything north of 50 million, you're all right. If you have $50 million at any one point in your life, you should never go broke again. I mean, if you do, that's on you. But there are tens of thousands of people like that. I think it's actually near 100,000 people have a net worth over $50 million. And there's a couple of things. Number one, that money is not income. Net worth is just everything you owe. If it was all paid, what do you have left over? And there's your net worth right there. It's not as though Jeff Bezos is making billions of dollars a year, like he's paid out billions of dollars a year from the company. He's the largest single shareholder of Amazon. He only owns 10% of it. But because the prices of Amazon is unbelievable right now, his net worth is 180 billion, or whatever it is. He owns 55 million shares of Amazon. And this is, again, publicly traded company. This is all public knowledge. But Jeff Bezos's salary from Amazon, which is what everybody pays their taxes on. You get a W-2, you get a 1099, whatever your salary is, plus your bonuses and all that sort of stuff. That's what we pay our income tax on, most of us. Jeff Bezos' salary might be a little bit less than you would guess. What would you guess his take-home pay is as the CEO? Well, he's former CEO now, but when he was the CEO, what he made? If you guessed $81,000, you're right. His base salary is $81,000. Factor in bonuses and some other shit that he doesn't have to disclose. In 2020, he made $1.6 million. Okay? That probably doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense to you. Doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense to me either, because I also can just scroll down on, what's going on with Jeff Bezos's sort of Google search, and you see that he spent $500 million building a boat for himself. As a matter of fact, actually, he spent $1 billion. $500 million was for the big boat, and then he spent something like another $350 million on a little boat that is supposed to bring stuff to and from the big boat. So he's got the $500 some odd million big boat, might be $600 million. I don't want to shortchange the guy. $600 million big boat, $300 million, maybe $350 million little boat, because the big boat needs a little boat so that the big boat can be as comfortable as you'd expect a fucking big boat to be. How do you do that, though? So, like, the best I ever did at a job was like $90,000 a year. I made more at one point in my life, salary, than Jeff Bezos. But I don't have, and this is going to fucking shock you, I do not have a $500 million boat somewhere. Just let that sink in. I know you thought that I was about to break the news like, hey, we're all going for a party. No, I don't have a $500 million boat. So if he only makes 81 grand, or let's use the big number with bonuses and everything else, he makes $1.5 million a year. So that's what he pays his income tax on. But how the fuck is that possible? So what is common among people over a certain net worth, rather than taking a salary in cash or in direct pay, the way all of us are kind of forced to if you have a W-2 or a 1099, that's the way you have to take your money. It is what it is. Rather than doing that, they take very little. And he gets things like stock options, or he just, in Bezos's case, he just, continues to own those shares. He hasn't sold those shares. And obviously the price of those shares has gone dramatically up, especially since the pandemic started in 2020. So that's where his $180 billion net worth comes from. But where does he get the $500 million to go buy the boat? It's not like the people that built the boat are just going to take his word for it. Like, he has to pay that shit. So, but where does he get the cash to pay for the boat? And why isn't that taxed income? I mean, it's not Amazon's boat. It's not like a business expense. That's Jeff Bezos' fucking boat. So what they all do is they go take out a loan. They go to the bank. Jeff Bezos will go into the bank. And not like, at the fucking ATM, but he'll call a banker, I'm sure, or he'll have one over to his boat and say, hey, look, I'm Jeff Bezos. You can tell by my head and my slightly shrunken eye. I want to take out a loan. Obviously, I own, significant share of Amazon. You might have heard of it. Will your bank approve me for a loan? Well, of course, he's going to get approved for a loan, but it's not like a loan like you or I would take out because you need it, or you want to start another business, or the normal reasons for taking out a loan. They take out loans just to run their lives. But why would you do that? Why would you take out a loan to pay for, what we would all see as luxuries? Like, I would take out a loan to buy a car if I needed a car, and then I would, pay the loan off as I could, pay the note. And if I came into some money or something like that, I might try and pay the car off early. But generally, you take out a house loan, a car loan, maybe a small business loan, something like that, and you pay it off over time. But I wouldn't go take out a loan for, say, 10 grand because I wanted to go on vacation. That just doesn't seem like a smart move for me or for a lot of us. But here's the thing, is when you're extremely wealthy like that, you can go to a bank and say, I want to borrow $1 billion, like Jeff Bezos did to pay for his boats. Well, they're going to loan you the money. Yeah, you own Amazon. You're good for the money. So they're going to loan it to you. And then they charge you less than 1% on that money. Okay? So you don't have to pay the income tax on it. You take the loan out and you can go do whatever you want with it. And you got to pay back this you got to pay this loan back at, say, 1%. But I tell you what, let's do it like this. Let's take fucking Bezos out of it. Let's just say you got $50 million, okay? And it's tied up in shares of a company. Most of it is. Normally, you'd have to get you have to sell the shares to get the cash to spend it. You go to the bank and say, hey, I own all this shit. Give me a loan for $5 million, 10% of what you own. I'll pay you back soon. Well, right now the government has a, near zero interest rate. So the bank has a really low interest rate for people like that. And it's like 1%. If you're borrowing millions of dollars, the rates get lower and lower because even a low rate on a big number, the bank can make a little bit of money. But 1%, so every $10,000 that you borrow, you're paying back $100. Okay? So for the $5 million, you have to pay back $50,000. You take your $5 million, and you don't have to pay it back for a few years either, because it's like, 5 years or something like that is typical from what I'm seeing. And let's just say you take half of it and you invest it in Amazon. $2.5 million and you invest it in Amazon. If you'd have done that in January of 2020, you'd have gotten 1,300 shares of Amazon at that time. $2.5 million in January of 2020, and you would have ended up with 1,300 shares of Amazon. And you would have made by now $1.5 million on your $2.5 million. And you still have the other 2.5 to fuck off with, like, buying a boat. Now, if you'd have done that with Tesla or something like that, you'd have had like 28,000 shares at the time, and it'd be worth over $140 million right now. But that's how that works. So then you have the money to pay back the loan, and you didn't pay any income tax on it. Because those personal loans aren't taxable things. It's just a loan. And as a matter of fact, the interest you paid, that $50,000 you paid on that $5 million, you can write that off on your taxes at the end of the day. It's only when you actually sell the shares that you have to pay, that capital gains tax that we hear so much about. It's like 15%, 20%. That's when you pay that. Only when you sell the shares. And you don't even have to get lucky to have, inside knowledge to know pandemic, Amazon's about to go through the roof, or Tesla's about to go through the roof. Maybe you're not, you don't have inside information or anything like that. You could have put, $2.5 million into fucking Hormel, the canned food company, and you would have netted like $300,000-$400,000 after paying the bank back. So that's the way they get around paying the taxes. And you see all these really wealthy people spending all this money that they don't actually get paid. They go borrow the money, and they can invest it in something that's going to make them more money to pay back the loan and fund whatever the hell they want to do. But that's to the bank, right? That's got nothing to do with taxes. That's not my fucking business, actually. Like Jeff Bezos borrowing that money to go build himself a fucking boat, not my business. But what is my business is the taxes. It's everybody's business. Everybody in your neighborhood better be paying their cut of the cost of the sewer system, right? Like the road maintenance, we all drive on them or get driven around on them, right? And we're all big girls and big boys, and we can talk about money, right? The bill comes at the end of the meal, and we all sat down under the impression that we were going to split it, and the richest dude at the table forgot his wallet? Really? It's another kind of thing we have where we have a real problem talking about money. It's really secretive in our country. Nobody wants to tell anybody what they make, and it's for another episode that I'm kind of working on, but we're way too secretive about money. But we all have a right to make sure everybody's putting their bread in the oven. And, this kind of goes back to state tax and city tax, because that's an argument I've heard. That extraordinarily wealthy people, you find out that they paid 0% or 1 or 2 or 3% in federal taxes, but hey, they pay city taxes, they pay state taxes. Terrific. But in the real world, you don't get or shouldn't get a participation trophy. You don't get to do the least, and the rest of us pretend like you're doing something extraordinary. First of all, the taxes you're paying to the city and to the state that you live in is based off that fraudulent ass number that I gave you earlier. So sticking with Bezos for another minute, out of the, $180 billion that is his net worth, he's only paying the city taxes on that $1 million. That's it. Now, to me, $1 million is a lot of money. To him, $1 million is, what's the smallest word? What's the littlest thing? That's what that is to that guy. So, paying your local taxes, congratulations, you're doing the least that you're supposed to do, and that's that. But the federal taxes goes to different shit. And it's not all stuff that you would disagree with. I don't care who you are. Military pensions, for example. Your city taxes doesn't do shit for Bud Anderson, last surviving flying ace from World War II. A flying ace means that he shot down at least 5 aircraft in combat. Fucking stud. He's 100 years old. Who among us isn't putting in the pot for his health care? Your local taxes don't do anything for him. And don't confuse Mr. Anderson with Dean Caswell, last surviving Marine flying ace, and the other 18 million people that are veterans. That's just one example of where the federal dollars go that your city and state taxes don't go to. And when I say yours and I say mine, I am excluding people that I assume that this is not an audience filled with extraordinarily rich people. Maybe some of you are. Congratulations. Your local taxes don't do anything to help the military at all. Not even a little bit. Same thing goes for federal highways. Your local taxes don't do shit for them. Same thing for Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. All the things that the federal government pays for all comes from federal taxes. So if I'm holding the bag, a bigger bag than Jeff Bezos on federal taxes, and that's okay because he pays his city tax, well, shit, I pay my city taxes as well. And state taxes, because that's what you do when you're a grown-up. You pay all your bills. And you don't get high-fived because you figure out a way to shortchange other people out of what you're supposed to pay, which is exactly what this little kind of scheme is, where instead of just taking money as a salary, people like Bezos literally everybody on this list does that. They don't take massive salaries and pay the taxes on them. Some people call that smart. Some people call it shiesty. And so they're not paying the taxes. They don't pay federal taxes. Now, how does that sit with you? Because there's a lot of different opinions, a spectrum of opinions about whether or not people like that are exorbitantly wealthy should pay more than the rest of us. Some people think that it's unfair, that there are different percentages for different incomes and there should be just a flat tax and all this sort of stuff. There's a couple of these arguments that I find a little bit more obviously problematic than other ones. And one of them that came up a few years ago was this term, it's a pretty clever fucking trick, of just labeling really, really rich people as job creators. Okay? And I think that this worked because we misunderstand how exactly the jobs are created. So, sticking with Bezos, Amazon is a fully functioning company on its own. Since 2016, it's been profitable. Before that, it wasn't. It was running on investment dollars. But 2016, it became profitable. It is still profitable and appears to remain to be so, or that it will continue to be so. If Jeff Bezos has to pay more in taxes, that has absolutely no effect on the business workings of Amazon itself, even when he was still the CEO. It's not going to affect. So it's not like Every time Amazon hires a warehouse worker, that Jeff Bezos is cutting a check out of his personal bank account. That's just not how that works. Amazon and every other company, they run off of their own operating capital. They sell a bunch of shit that brings in their gross revenue. That's just all the money. And then as you go down the line, you pay all your bills. You got to pay the light bills, water bills. You got to pay your staff, cleanup crew, insurance, you name it. All the costs come out. And then at the bottom of a profit and loss statement, you have your net profit. And that is the money that the company has left over after all the bills are paid, including all the people. Everything is paid. Whatever's left over is the net profit. That money, then, it depends on the company. Sometimes it'll go back into the business. They'll do research and development. Sometimes they use it to buy their own stock, to make their stock price go up, which makes it more valuable to the people that hold it, namely people that are executives in the company. So if the company offers a package to an executive, it's going to be like $1 million up front, salary, but then there's going to be like $14 million in stock options. Well, those packages become more valuable if the stock is worth more. You see what I mean? So they'll take the company can take the net revenue, net profit, buy their stock back, make the stock more valuable to their executives, employees, and then, everybody's happier. Everybody's making a little bit more money. But taxing those individuals doesn't change one penny of what the company has to spend on like hiring people, because that's the whole trick. We don't want to tax job creators. Jeff Bezos created Amazon. This is true. But his personal salary from Amazon doesn't pay anybody else. The company pays everybody else. They are separate pots of money. You have Amazon's money over here, and you have Jeff Bezos' money over here. For example, if Bezos sold all of his Amazon stock right now, the shock to the system might make the price of it drop a little bit, might make it go up, because there's going to be more shares out and about for other people to buy. That might excite the market, and the price might go up for a little bit. Who knows how that would affect the actual market value of Amazon. But if he sold all of his shares and took his $170 billion, Amazon would run exactly as it did the day before he did that. As a company, it would continue to hire. It would hold interviews in Schenectady and Illinois, everywhere where it has a warehouse. It would continue to hire as though that didn't happen. And anybody trying to describe it differently to you is completely full of shit. And there just aren't as many business owners or people that have sat in rooms with business executives among us to know that that's the way that works. They just say, oh, their job. I mean, the guy's so rich, he could open businesses like crazy and just create all these jobs. It's just not the fucking way that it works. It's not the way that it practically works on the ground. Once the company is up and running and becomes profitable, it is a self-sustaining thing if it's a profitable company. Taxing the CEO doesn't change the fact that the company is going to continue to grow. It's like saying you can't put any regulations on any companies because they won't be able to grow as much as they would without regulations. Yes, but they will still continue to grow if they're good companies. I mean, there's got to be some limitations on it, but on you don't want to regulate absolutely everything. But it's the same sort of idea. I mean, you take the guy we're talking about, the exorbitantly wealthy people taking out loans to kind of pay for all their shit rather than taking a salary. Like the CEO of FedEx, this guy named Fred Smith. I did not make that name up. Fred Smith. He did the same thing. He's worth like 20, 30 million bucks. They pay him like $15 million a year. And he took out a loan and bought stock in his own company because the stock price, he could guess, over the next 5 years was going to go up more than the interest on the loan. The dude can take out a loan and make more money on the loan than he'd have to pay back for the loan. You see how self-perpetuating that is? Once you hit a certain threshold of money, it's like it's really hard to go broke again. Because the numbers just work in your favor because it's just so much fucking money. And then there's the argument about earning. Thankfully, in our country, there is, I'm not anti-capitalist. There are benefits to having capitalism. But there's this argument of earning. Who earned what? And let's look at this for a second. So, it's a good example. Insulin. Everybody knows what it is. I'm just trying to think of examples that will be very common to everybody's mind. Insulin. Really important drug for diabetes, okay? There's only 3 companies in the world that make something like 90% of the insulin, okay? I think there's maybe 30 companies total that make it, but these 3 companies dominate the market. And they dominate the American market, which I'm most familiar with. And only one of those 3 companies is even American. So it's the only one that really falls into what I'm talking about. It's called Eli Lilly. You might have heard of it. Eli Lilly makes insulin, sells it in this country. Insulin costs about $4 to make. Okay? A vial of insulin costs about $4 to make. Just keep that in mind. So the CEO of Eli Lilly, his name is David Ricks, okay? He makes about $21 million a year. Good for him. They give him $1.5 million in pay up front, and they give him $13 million in stock so that he can use that to take out those loans. It's an added benefit that's not on paper, but it's understood by people that make this much money. They give him $13 million in stock options, which to us would be like, just give us the cash. No. He takes that $13 million in stock, goes to the bank and says, hey, I've got $13 million here. Loan me 10 or loan me 7. Then he can invest that money, make more money on it, pay the loan off, and still bank more money. Well, Eli Lilly sells that insulin for about $300 a vial. It costs $4 to make it, and they sell it for about $300. And again, we all know that insulin is one of the more life-saving drugs in the world, right? So that 200, and this is a personal question. I mean, you're going to have to answer this for yourself, but be honest with yourself. That $296 in profit that the company charges people that have diabetes to have insulin to stay alive. I'm not exaggerating. That is, people that have diabetes, if they don't have it, they die. It's just that simple. Or they go on dialysis or some such. But the $296 in profit that company uses to pay David his money, did they earn that? Did that company earn that $296? Is that how we think of the word earn? Like, would you equate that, honestly, would you equate that to like an electrician earning his or her money? Like a company that charges as much as they possibly can for a drug that people need to not die? Is that earning? I don't think that's the same. I mean, he was paid that money. He didn't steal that money. But I don't think the company is earning that much money. They're charging that much money for sure. That money's going in their bank. I'd say that they're like earning the first $10, $20 in upcharge. Cost them $4 to make it. If they charged $20 for it, we could have a conversation about they've earned that because you put the thing out there, you actually make it. There's nothing wrong with making a profit, but $296 on your $4 on something that is particularly needed by society. I'd say the rest is gouging. Like, if a hurricane hits and the gas station jacks the price of gas up to $10 a gallon from $3 a gallon, even if it's not costing them anymore. I mean, the gas is in their tanks underneath the ground. The cost of that, it's already paid for. And they jack the price up to $10 a gallon. Are they earning that extra money? I mean, you can look at diabetes as like a perpetual hurricane constantly hitting people. And that cost is just getting eaten over and over and over again, either by insurance or by people paying it privately. Are they earning that money? I don't know. What I do know is the nearest analogy I can think of, something that is it's not equivalent, but it's as equivalent as we can get for a typical person. Average income in the United States is like 60 grand, 54 grand, something like that. That sort of person, do they have anything close to what I'm describing that these billionaires can do, where they go to the bank, they take out a loan, they literally use the loan money to pay for all their lifestyle stuff, and then they can reinvest some of that money to not only pay back the loan, but also the interest on the loan. They can write that off and avoid all tax, or if they lose money, they can actually write that money off too and get money back. Like, I think Bezos and a bunch of these billionaires, I think half the list got fucking child income tax credit refunds that were passed in what, 2018 or 2020? They actually got checks for that. The closest thing I could think of that we could do is flipping houses. That's close. You go to the bank, you buy this house, 150 grand, let's say. You go to the bank, you borrow 10 grand against your house. You go to the bank and say, look, got this $150,000 house, loan me $10,000, and they do it. And let's say you take that whole $10,000 and you put it into the house to make repairs that will, more often than not, net you more money than their cost. Let's say you do that. You spend the 10 grand on your $150,000 house, you sell it for $175,000. You pay off the house loan, you pay off the loan to do the repairs, you pocket the $15,000. That's basically more or less the same thing, except that they pocket millions, and they haven't really added anything tangible back into the group like a house does. I'm not saying owning stock in a company is not a good idea. I'm saying we could probably agree that putting a house on the market would make a greater difference in the life of the next owner than any single share of a company would. I mean, minus a few like Berkshire Hathaway, which is interesting actually. Let's look at that for a second. A single share of that company is $500,000. By comparison, a single share of Disney is like $1.75. One share of Berkshire Hathaway's A stock is $500,000. I think it's actually $550,000. This company is, they don't make anything. Okay, it's called a holding company. They don't make anything. I'm not trying to demean them. I'm not saying they don't make anything because they produce a few products. They make absolutely nothing. The whole company is built because it owns stock in other companies. That's all they do. It's majority owned by Warren Buffett. I think he's like 90 years old now. He's one of the richest people in the world. All his money is tied up in Berkshire Hathaway. His salary is like $350,000 annually. But his net worth is, $100 billion or whatever it is. It's a company that makes nothing, but owns almost $1 trillion in stock. That's all it is. They find companies that they like and either buy the companies outright or they buy majority shares. That's all the company does. There's nothing like that for people that get a W-2 or a 1099. So when we're talking about who pays what taxes, we have to be really clear about the differences in how all of us make money and are forced to spend money because of the tax system. I mean, it was written on purpose. It's not like an accident. It's not like, oh, well, shit, they figured out something, and as soon as I figure it out, I can take advantage too. No, it doesn't work like that. And I think there's something hidden in a lot of us where we fight against the idea of billionaires or multi-millionaires paying higher taxes than we do because we're Americans, and part of us hopes that we're going to be part of that bracket at some point, and we're not going to want to pay that money at that point. You know what I mean? Like, you know anybody like that where you'll talk about it and they'll defend extraordinarily wealthy people's wealth as though it was their own? Kind of like, I'm going to be part of that club at some point, and, Bezos is with me sort of thing. It's kind of weird. But it's something that it's pervasive here. I mean, this debt that I'm talking about that wealthy people take out in personal loans, this doesn't even go on their fucking credit reports half the time. You know what I mean? I'm talking about just levels of difference between the way that taxes are applied to them and taxes are applied to us. Right now, just Morgan Stanley, okay, the bank, they've got $68 billion out in those sorts of loans right now. They've got almost $70 billion outstanding right now to people in personal loans of the kind that I described that are funding, lifestyles and boats and shit like that. Bank of America's got another $62 billion. So just those two banks, there's $130 billion out right now in these personal loans. You can look at that as $130 billion that is being hidden from taxation. Rather than paying the high rate on the income tax, which I think is like 38%, they'll pay fucking nothing. They'll pay zero, none, no dollars, $0, or very, very, very near $0. Like I said earlier, it's something like 3%. So I don't know if 20% is the right number. What I do know is if we expect to have anything close to a fairer society, that it's got to be a number higher than it is right now. You can't allow people to skirt their obligations and at the same time pretend they're doing favors to others. Like Elon Musk, a couple of months ago, he was getting called out by Bernie Sanders, and he's got his issues too. But he was being called out, and he puts out, I'm paying $11 billion in taxes this year. And he put that out there like, hey, motherfucker, look, I'm paying my bill. And that's a lot of fucking money, dude. I'm not pretending that $11 billion is not a lot of money. But if we're talking percentages, okay, it's not that much money to him. Like, he can put that number out there because he knows that he's going to have 200 million Americans that are going to be in awe. This guy paid $11 billion in taxes. Jesus Christ. That percentage of taxes that he paid is less than you paid. Guarantee. So don't even talk to me about a flat tax. This is a lesser tax. This is a lower number than you pay. I don't give a fuck who you are listening to this right now. He pays less than you pay. Like, a flat tax would be a fucking improvement over where we're at right now. I don't think a flat tax is the right way to go. I think if you make that much more money, you should be taxed at a higher rate, more of an Eisenhower kind of person in that way. But either way, we're not talking about fair. We're not talking about flat. We're talking about fucking less. That is not sustainable. You can't benefit from society in that way and then put less back in. I mean, the guy's worth $200 billion. Okay? If he paid 11, let's keep it all simple. Let's say he paid 10 billion in taxes. He's worth 200 billion. That is 5% of his net worth. What percentage in taxes did you pay? Do you think that it is fair for somebody that is wealthier than you? Let's say you make 50 grand. Let's say you make 100 grand. Is it fair for somebody that has $200 billion to pay a smaller a smaller percentage of taxes than you? I don't think so. And I'm gonna have a whole nother episode on how the fuck it is perfectly reasonable to expect better ways of spending money. But before you even get there, you have to settle up people putting money in the pot. You have to know what you're actually working with before you can decide how to spend it and what you have to spend. So it's something that I think we should all take a little bit more notice on, because as time goes on, this problem's just going to get bigger and bigger. And I know the concern that you have is the same as I have, that we're losing billionaires by the clutch every year. But I think we'll be able to absorb those losses, and we can help these people and help ourselves at the same time by making sure that we are all putting in what we're supposed to put in. I am not suggesting that people that make $100,000 a year at their small business need to pay more in taxes. I'm not suggesting that people that make $200,000 a year in their small business need to pay more in taxes. I'm not even suggesting people that make like $300,000 or $400,000 a year need to pay more in their taxes. I am, however, suggesting that the ability of extraordinarily wealthy people to not pay them at all is a huge fucking problem. You know, money is supposed to be a finite resource. You know, it's interesting, the same people that talk about taxes and fairness and don't want the government printing money and all this sort of shit, they want money to be finite. They don't want it to be infinite, because then it'd be worthless. You know, the worth of something goes up when there's less of it. So money is supposed to be finite. And money is also necessary. Money is both finite and necessary. It's like water in that way. So how much of the world's fresh water would you be okay with Jeff Bezos owning? And then how much would you be okay with him being allowed to hoard? You see what I'm saying? Money is the exact same thing. You can equate it to a lot of stuff. We have to be more on top of this. I can't think of an episode that is, to some, more boring than fucking taxes. But I'm hoping that adults can set aside their need for entertainment for a few minutes and think about this sort of shit. Because A, we do have some say-so over it, because we vote for people and elect people that make tax law, and because it fucking matters. Because it fucking matters. So, as always, I appreciate you listening. If you like the episodes, like, comment, subscribe, all those great things. Very, very helpful for me. If you don't like them, don't do any of that. You chill. Listen to another couple of episodes, find something you like, and then review that one. Do me a solid. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you next time.